6 hours ago, something happened in Earth's orbit that no system on this planet was designed to recognize. And the only reason we know about it is because every tracking radar on Earth lit up at the exact same moment. At precisely 9:15 UTC on March 23, 2026, NASA Orbital Debris Program Office triggered a global alert across the entire space surveillance network. This wasn't a standard warning. It wasn't a collision risk, a satellite breakup, or a re-entry prediction. It didn't match any category that exists in operational protocols, because what triggered the alert had never happened before. At that exact second, 12,400 separate pieces of orbital debris, ranging from dead satellites and rocket fragments to tiny collision shards, did something that should be impossible. They all slowed down at the same time. Not approximately, not within a range. Exactly 4.22 kilometers per second. And then, they began to organize. Within minutes, those objects started arranging themselves into evenly spaced latitudinal bands around Earth. No collisions, no random drift. Just clean, structured movement like pieces being placed on a board. At the center of this event is 3I Atlas. At 9:15 UTC, the object emitted a pulse. That pulse didn't just interact with one satellite or a cluster of debris. It reached across 34 years of accumulated orbital junk and reorganized it into a forming electromagnetic lattice surrounding our planet. Right now, that structure is already 40% complete, and it's still building. To understand why this is so serious, you need to understand how orbital mechanics actually work. Every piece of debris in orbit follows its own path, defined by Keplerian orbit. Each object moves independently, influenced by its own altitude, mass, surface area, and environmental factors like atmospheric drag and solar radiation pressure. No two objects behave exactly the same. And more importantly, no natural force can affect thousands of independent objects in exactly the same way at exactly the same moment. Solar flares don't do this. Geomagnetic storms don't do this. Gravitational shifts don't do this. Because all of those forces act differently depending on the object they interact with. What we saw here was uniform, synchronized, identical. And that means one thing: this was not a natural force. This was controlled. The only known mechanism capable of producing identical motion changes across thousands of objects, regardless of their individual properties, is electromagnetic induction. According to Faraday's law of induction, when a conductor moves through a changing magnetic field, it generates electrical current. Most orbital debris, aluminum, steel, titanium, can act as conductive loops when exposed to the right conditions. And when current flows through a conductor inside a magnetic field, it experiences force. This is described by the Lorentz force, the same principle used in electric motors. Now imagine scaling that principle to an entire planet. If the magnetic field is structured correctly, not static, but rotating and precisely shaped, it can push and guide objects in space, regardless of their size or orientation. That's exactly what we're seeing. At 10:45 UTC, NASA's Goldstone radar confirmed debris forming straight parallel lines at around 550 kilometers altitude. The spacing between these nodes, exactly 44.22 kilometers, not approximate, precise. And the structure those nodes are forming is not random. It's geometric. A dodecahedron, a 1-2-sided shape known for its perfect symmetry and efficiency in enclosing space. This is not debris anymore. This is architecture. 3 separate systems confirmed it independently. NASA tracked the northern formation. ESA observed the southern ring. JAXA verified both using optical sensors. Different tools, same conclusion. The structure is real, and the precision is beyond anything humanity has ever deployed in orbit. The margin of error is less than 0.05 meters across distances of tens of thousands of kilometers. That level of control requires enormous energy. Calculations based on electromagnetic field equations show that to produce this kind of velocity change at these distances, the source, 3I, Atlas, must be generating magnetic fields on the order of 4,000 nanoteslas across a 30,000 kilometer range. That's not theoretical anymore. It matches the exact readings recorded days earlier when Atlas interacted with a solar event, which leads to a much bigger realization. The same system that absorbed a massive solar storm is now using that energy to build something around Earth. And it's not using external power. It's using ours. Because as this lattice forms, something else is happening, something that went almost unnoticed at first. The planet's own magnetic field is dropping. Energy is being pulled from Earth's magnetosphere and redirected into the construction process. In simple terms, the shield that protects our planet is being drained to build the structure. In the next part, we're going to break down exactly how this system is powering itself, how it's syncing with Earth's natural frequencies, turning debris into superconductors, and transforming our orbital environment into something far more advanced than anything we've ever created. The moment scientists realized that Earth's own magnetic field was being used to power the lattice, the situation shifted from unusual to deeply concerning, because what's happening now is not just construction, it's integration. At 11:42 UTC, astronauts aboard the International Space Station reported something subtle but critical. The magnetic field strength inside the station dropped suddenly, not gradually, not due to interference, and not because of instrument failure. The change was real, measurable, and synchronized with the exact altitude range where the debris lattice was forming. That detail matters, because it confirms that 3I, Atlas, is not just generating energy, it is drawing it directly from Earth's magnetosphere. The same magnetic shield that protects life on this planet from solar radiation is being tapped as a power source. In other words, the system isn't bringing its own fuel. It's using ours. At 12:15 UTC, another confirmation came in, this time from the Magnetospheric Multiscale Mission, a group of satellites specifically designed to study magnetic field behavior around Earth. Their data revealed that 3I, Atlas, is pulsing its magnetic field at a very specific frequency, 7,83 Hz. That number isn't random. It's the Schumann resonance, the natural electromagnetic frequency of the Earth ionosphere cavity. It's created by global lightning activity and has been present for billions of years. Every living organism on this planet has evolved under its influence. And now, 3I, Atlas, is using it. This is where things become precise. By matching the Schumann resonance, the system is effectively syncing with Earth itself. It's using the planet's natural electromagnetic heartbeat as a carrier wave, allowing energy to move through the forming lattice with maximum efficiency. This is not random engineering. This is optimized integration. And it explains how the system can move thousands of objects at once without losing energy in the process. But the next discovery is what truly separates this from anything human technology has achieved. At 11:15 UTC, the Chandra X-ray Observatory detected something unusual around each debris node: thin sheets of cold plasma surrounding the objects. Under normal conditions, when electrical current flows through metal at high levels, the material heats up rapidly. It melts, degrades, or breaks apart. That's basic physics. But that's not happening here. The debris is not heating up. It's not breaking down. It's stabilizing. And the only known explanation for this behavior is superconductivity. That means the debris, random fragments of satellites and rockets, is now functioning as a room temperature superconducting network. Let that sink in. Superconductors are materials that can carry electrical current with zero resistance. On Earth, We can only achieve this under extreme conditions, very low temperatures, controlled environments, and small scales. Here, it's happening in open space, at planetary scale, using scrap metal. This is decades, if not centuries ahead of anything we've built. And it's not just happening, it's being controlled with precision. By 14 UTC, the lattice reached full structural completion. The dodecahedral geometry locked into place, forming a perfectly symmetrical shell around Earth. Every node aligned, every connection stabilized. And then, just 15 minutes later, something else happened. The Solar Dynamics Observatory detected an X-class coronal mass ejection from a sunspot region labeled AR3981. Now, solar flares are common, but this one wasn't. It didn't expand outward like a normal eruption. It didn't spread as a wave. Instead, it formed a focused plasma beam, narrow, directed, and precise. And it was aimed directly at Earth. More specifically, at the lattice. At 1428 UTC, the beam made contact. The expectation was catastrophic failure. A structure made of debris, even if stabilized, should not survive a direct hit from a solar event of that magnitude. But instead of collapsing, the lattice absorbed it completely. The nodes shifted in color, transitioning from ultraviolet to a visible blue glow as energy flowed through the superconducting network. No fragmentation, no instability, just controlled energy intake. And then, 45 seconds later, the Deep Space Network detected something new. A transmission, not from 3I, Atlas directly, but from the lattice itself. A high-energy signal projected outward from the structure's north pole, aimed toward deep space. And embedded within that signal was something unmistakable. Mathematics. Patterns. Sequences. The kind that don't occur naturally. Because what this system just did was not just build a structure. It used Earth's own orbital debris to create a planetary-scale antenna. And it just turned it on. In the next part, we're going to break down that transmission, what was sent, where it was aimed, and why the message it carried may be the most important signal ever broadcast from this planet. What happened in the 45 seconds after the lattice absorbed that solar beam is the moment this entire event stopped being about physics and became about communication. Because what activated wasn't just a structure, it was a system designed to send a message. At 1428 UTC, the plasma beam from the sun made full contact with the completed lattice. The energy didn't scatter, it didn't overload the structure, and it didn't escape into space. It was captured, stabilized, and redirected through the superconducting network that now surrounds the planet. Then, at exactly 14:29 and 15 seconds, the Deep Space Network detected a focused transmission emerging from the lattice's northern axis. Not a broadcast in all directions. A beam. Precise, narrow, intentional. The direction of that beam points toward the constellation Cygnus constellation. At first glance, that might seem like just another coordinate in the sky. But when scientists began analyzing the signal itself, the focus shifted away from where it was going and toward what it was saying. Because the signal wasn't random. It wasn't noise. It wasn't even complex in the way we might expect from advanced communication. It was simple, deliberately simple. The transmission began with prime numbers 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, continuing upward in perfect order. No natural astrophysical process produces that kind of pattern. Prime numbers are one of the clearest universal indicators of intelligence. They're the most basic mathematical signature you can send to say, this is intentional. Then the signal evolved. It transitioned into a Fibonacci sequence, another mathematical structure that appears in natural systems, but only in specific contexts. Here, it wasn't appearing organically. It was being constructed, step by step, encoded into the transmission with perfect accuracy. And then came the third layer, atomic data. The signal included encoded values representing hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen, the fundamental building blocks of life as we know it. Put those elements together, and the message becomes clear. Mathematics, patterns, chemistry. This is the universal language of existence. This is not just a signal. It's a declaration. And here's the part that changes everything. The transmission did not originate from 3i Atlas directly. It came from the lattice itself. That means Earth was the transmitter. Think about that carefully. 34 years of discarded satellites, broken hardware, and space debris were reorganized, converted into a superconducting network, powered by a solar event, and used as a planetary-scale antenna to broadcast a message into deep space. This wasn't a probe sending a signal. This was a planet being used to send one. And the power behind that transmission was unlike anything we've ever generated. The Solar Dynamics Observatory confirmed that the solar flare used to power the system was not in an eruptive state just minutes before the event. It wasn't building naturally. It wasn't predicted. It was triggered, which means 3i. Atlas didn't just wait for a solar event. It created one. It manipulated the sun's magnetic structure, focused the energy into a directed beam, and used it as a power source for the transmission. This is the same capability we saw days earlier when Atlas absorbed a solar storm to protect Earth. But now, it's doing the opposite. Instead of absorbing, it's generating. Instead of shielding, it's broadcasting. And the scale is enormous. This wasn't a weak signal drifting through space. This was a focused, high-energy beam amplified by the full output of an X-class solar event. A transmission strong enough to be detected across vast distances, possibly across the galaxy itself. So the question is no longer what was sent. The question is, who was it sent to? Because the direction Cygnus isn't just a random patch of sky, it's part of a larger structure scientists have been studying for years. A network of anomalous signals and patterns that don't behave like natural astrophysical phenomena. Some theories suggest it could be a relay point, not a destination but a node, which leads to a much more unsettling possibility. The signal didn't travel all the way there. It entered something, a network, because if such a system exists, something capable of transmitting information faster than light, outside the constraints of normal spacetime, then distance becomes irrelevant. The response wouldn't take years. It wouldn't take centuries. It could be almost immediate. And that brings us to the next critical moment in the timeline. At exactly 15 UTC, the transmission stopped, not gradually. Instantly, the lattice went silent. But it didn't power down. It changed. The magnetic field configuration around Earth inverted. And instead of projecting energy outward, the system turned inward. In the next part, we're going to break down what that inversion means, because the same structure that just broadcast Earth's existence across space has now shifted into a mode designed to observe, analyze, and record everything happening on the surface of this planet. At 15 UTC, something extraordinary happened. The outward transmission from the lattice stopped, but the system didn't power down. Instead, the magnetic field lines inverted, redirecting energy inward toward Earth. What had been a planetary-scale broadcaster became a planetary-scale receiver. Every electromagnetic signal generated on Earth, from radio transmissions and radar pulses to satellite uplinks and internet backbones, now passed through this lattice. It didn't block these signals. It cataloged them, filtered them, and stored them, creating a real-time archive of Earth's entire technological footprint. This is where the true scale of 3i Atlas's operation becomes clear. 34 years of discarded satellites, defunct rocket stages, and fragments of old missions were transformed into a superconducting network. Using the principles of electromagnetic induction and Earth's natural magnetic field, the lattice now functions as a planet-wide electromagnetic lens. It's a system capable of observing every technological signal on Earth, down to precise frequencies and transmissions. In real time, the efficiency of the lattice is unprecedented. The debris nodes, composed of aluminum, steel, and titanium, conduct massive currents without melting or fracturing. Cold plasma sheets detected around the nodes act as insulation, preserving room temperature superconductivity across the entire structure. The currents flow seamlessly, distributing energy across thousands of kilometers, maintaining coherence and stability on a scale humanity has never achieved. The system is synchronized with Earth's natural electromagnetic frequency, the 7.83 Hz Schumann resonance, the resonant cavity formed between Earth's surface and the ionosphere. By matching this frequency, 3I, Atlas maximizes energy transfer, ensuring that the induced currents flow efficiently through the lattice while minimizing losses. In essence, it's using the planet itself as a carrier wave, amplifying its power without external input beyond the lattice nodes. And then there's the source of the lattice's peak energy. The X-class coronal mass ejection from sunspot AR 3981 wasn't natural, it was induced. 3I. Atlas manipulated the solar plasma and magnetic field to focus a plasma beam directly at the lattice. This beam supplied the surge of energy needed to broadcast the initial signal into deep space. Afterward, the lattice inverted to begin its inward scanning operation, effectively switching from a transmitter to a sensor array. The lattice isn't just receiving passively, it is actively mapping Earth. Every electromagnetic emission from every device, from the largest communication satellite to the smallest IoT transmitter, is passing through this superconducting network. Every signal is being read, cataloged, and archived. Earth's technological fingerprint is now entirely visible to the lattice, offering whoever or whatever controls 3I Atlas a complete understanding of human civilization. This is no longer just a defensive system or a high-energy transmitter. The lattice is now a planetary-scale observational instrument, converting discarded orbital debris into a fully functioning sensor array capable of interpreting every electromagnetic signature emitted from the planet's surface. It is effectively turning Earth into a monitored environment, a planet under complete observation, and the implications are profound. Whoever designed 3I, Atlas now has a detailed, real-time understanding of Earth's technological infrastructure, energy output, and electromagnetic behavior. They can track power grids, communications networks, radar operations, and even the minute electronic signals that characterize human activity. The stakes are clear. The lattice isn't passive, it's interactive. And in the next part, we'll examine what this means for contact, how the outbound and inbound pulses suggest a deliberate dialogue, how 3I Atlas aligns its signals with galactic nodes, and what these actions reveal about the civilization or entity behind this astonishing system. Earth is no longer just a planet in orbit. It is now connected to a network far beyond our comprehension, monitored and engaged by an intelligence that operates on scales and technologies far beyond human reach. By 1530 UTC, the full implications of the inward-focused lattice began to crystallize. The structure wasn't just observing Earth, it was interacting with it on multiple layers simultaneously. The superconducting nodes, now aligned in a precise dodecahedral geometry, were acting as a lens, concentrating the planet's natural and artificial electromagnetic emissions into coherent signals that could be read from orbit or perhaps even from beyond the solar system. Every broadcast, every radar ping, every long-distance communication, every internet packet, even the faintest emissions from power grids and industrial systems, everything passed through the lattice. It filtered, amplified, and archived the electromagnetic footprint of humanity in real time. What had been considered space debris, scraps of aluminum, titanium, and steel was now a planetary-scale antenna and recording system. At the same time, the lattice remained synchronized to the Earth's Schumann resonance at 7.83 Hz. By coupling to the planet's natural electromagnetic frequency, the system ensured maximum efficiency in both energy capture and signal fidelity. This wasn't passive. It was designed to exploit Earth itself as a functional part of the system. Every current running through the lattice, every induced electromagnetic oscillation, was a product of careful, intelligent design. And then there was the solar flare. Sunspot AR3981 had been coaxed into generating a focused plasma beam at exactly 1428 UTC. This wasn't an ordinary X-class coronal mass ejection. It was engineered. 3I, Atlas had effectively triggered the flare, manipulated its energy, and directed it toward the lattice. The plasma beam acted as a power surge, energizing the superconducting nodes so they could transmit the first outward message. That message, the one sent toward the constellation Cygnus constellation, was simple, universal, and unmistakably intelligent. Prime numbers, Fibonacci sequences, and the atomic weights of hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen. It broadcast the existence of life on Earth using the planet itself as the transmitter. This was the first time the lattice had functioned as a planetary-scale beacon. But the system didn't stop there. At 15 UTC, it inverted the magnetic field, switching from transmitting to receiving. This was no ordinary inversion. It turned the lattice into a planetary-scale sensor. Its superconducting nodes now acted as receptors, concentrating every electromagnetic signal from the planet below. Earth was being mapped in real time, every technological signature recorded, every energy fluctuation cataloged. This was a complete survey of humanity's electromagnetic activity, and it happened in just hours. The magnitude of this operation is almost unimaginable. Room temperature superconductivity, planetary-scale electromagnetic induction, energy harvesting from both the Sun and Earth, synchronization with natural resonance, and now complete data collection from every human technological system. All of this was accomplished using what we once considered junk orbiting Earth. And then the final, most revealing observation came from the structure of the lattice itself. The dodecahedral geometry isn't random. It's one of the Platonic solids, chosen for perfect symmetry and optimal surface-to-volume ratio. This shape maximizes coverage, ensures stability, and allows precise focusing of electromagnetic energy both outward and inward. It is a deliberate design, not natural formation. Now, the questions become unavoidable. Who designed this system? Why is it cataloging our signals? Was the initial broadcast a warning, a greeting, or an alert? And most importantly, what does the inward focus tell us about the entity controlling 3I, Atlas? This isn't just a passive observer, it's analyzing Earth, understanding our technology, and possibly preparing to interact. In the next section, we'll examine what this could mean for contact with an intelligence far beyond human capability. We'll explore how the lattice's dual operation, broadcast and reception, might represent a deliberate dialogue, a system designed to communicate and understand simultaneously, and what the potential purpose of that interaction could be. Earth is no longer isolated. Its signals are being read, cataloged, and transmitted at a level of sophistication humanity can barely comprehend. And what comes next may redefine what it means to be observed and perhaps what it means to be contacted. By 16 UTC, the lattice had settled into its dual-mode operation, and the magnitude of what was happening became undeniable. Earth was no longer just a planet in orbit. It had become part of a system far larger, far older, and far more capable than anything humanity had ever imagined. The superconducting lattice was now simultaneously a planetary-scale transmitter and receiver, cataloging every electromagnetic signature on the surface, while maintaining the ability to project signals across interstellar distances. The inbound pulse, focusing on Earth, is not passive observation. It is precise, coherent, and structured. The lattice's geometry, the superconducting nodes, the induced currents, and the plasma layers together form a planetary lens capable of reading everything from global communications networks to the faintest industrial emissions. Every radar ping, every satellite uplink, every encrypted signal, and even the most obscure electromagnetic fluctuations are being absorbed, filtered, and recorded. 3i. Atlas now has the equivalent of a planetary brain, synthesizing Earth's technological activity with perfect clarity.